Oh, baby. Man, I love that drum sound. I know it ain't country, folks, but I sure love it. You know, that theme song was written for us by a kid out of Belgium. And Belgium, right? I mean, he caught the program and he was like, wow, I got a song for you. And I actually made a theme song out of it. So thank you, by the way, for that great work. He allowed me to copyright it for our show. How cool is that, right? So anyway, what I wanted to, and I started to allude to this in our first segment, please make sure that you're keeping up with us on our Facebook page and our website, because we have so many cool things happening. You are going to just be astounded by some of the neat stuff that we've got in the works. So I want to continue on this thing with Samantha Powers in the UN, because I'm telling you, she is a very, very dangerous individual for us to have representing the United States of America as an ambassador. Man, I'm telling you, she's gonna be the person that sits on the Security Council. So when you think about that, and you read some of the things that she's written over the years, holy smoke, man, we are in big trouble. We are in big trouble already on a domestic front. Imagine handing our sovereignty over to the treasonous, betrayal-ridden UN. I mean, these are people that want what we've got. And we're sitting here saying we're going to allow the robber, the thief, to have control over where our doors are locked and not locked? You got to be flipping kidding me. I mean, that's just unbelievable. And I, for one, will not tolerate it. And you shouldn't either. And there's a great article I posted up on our Facebook page right underneath that story about Samantha Powers, which is, it's an older article from 2012 of October. And this was on the New American, a great story. The United Nations, on the brink of becoming a world government. Listen to this. I'm just going to read you the intro to this, and it ought to entice you to get over to Facebook and catch this. On October 14th, 2009, Lord Christopher Monckton, former science advisor to British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, delivered a scathing refutation of the concept of human-caused global warming at Bethel University in St. Paul, Minnesota. During his presentation, Lord Monckton focused on the UN climate treaty that was being proposed for the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Copenhagen that December. Here's his warning, and this is a quote. I read that treaty, and what it says is this, that a world government is going to be created. The world, quote, government, unquote, actually appears to be the first of three purposes of this new entity. The second purpose is the transfer of wealth from the countries of the West to third world countries. And the third purpose of this new entity is government, is enforcement. Wow. I'm telling you, by the way, they kicked him out after he did that. After that statement, they canned him. So anyway, here's the final statement in his warning. They are about to impose a communist world government on the world. That was Monckton's final warning. And after that speech, he was dismissed summarily. But guess what? They couldn't hide it. So you can't take it away once it's been said out there in public. And thank God for a guy like him who had the courage to stand up and expose it. And I guarantee you he knew that before he made that speech, it may well be the last one he would ever make publicly. So thank God for whistleblowers and patriots like Monckton for actually having the courage to stand up. Now, that was back in 2009. How many of you have heard the Ministry of Propaganda talk about that? None of you, or at least none of the mainstream Ministry of Propaganda people. They haven't talked about it. You know why? Because they don't want you to know what's really going on. This concept of utilizing propaganda against American citizens has been codified now in law under the NDAA that they just passed a month ago. But here's the deal. It's been going on for decades and decades and decades. All they've done is legalized in their minds what they've already been doing to us as American citizens. And that, ladies and gentlemen, would be defined under the word what? The big T word, treason. Treason. No other word for it. Treason. This government, this national government, this dictatorial, tyrannical national government is operating treasonously on you every single day. Make no mistake about it. Mark my words. If you don't see the evidence surrounding you now, and you haven't noticed the tidal wave of tyranny that's pouring down upon us, I don't know what you're waiting for. You got to open your eyes. Now, I'm going to break and change because we've only got 20 minutes left, and I got to get onto this thing about the DHS. Let me tell you something. They are under these new border security searches. And by the way, you think, oh, well, it's only the border security. Don't worry about it. If you're not coming across the border from Mexico, who cares? Stop right there. They call the border everything. In other words, the border runs all the way from the tip of Florida all the way up to the very northern tip of Maine, all the way across, including all the Great Lakes, and all the way over to the western tip of Washington State, all the way down the western border of the country, all the way down to the Mexican border, down to Brownsville, Texas, and then all the way across the Gulf back over to Miami. They consider the border not to be the Mexican border, not to be the Canadian border. If you are picked off within a 100-mile radius, listen to this, people, a 100-mile radius of any U.S. border, and by the way, that includes the entire border of Alaska, so they can nail you going in and they can nail you coming back out. And here's what they're doing. They are searching your phone and your laptop electronically to identify whether you have anything in there that would spark their interest. It's a fishing expedition and nothing more. And they're not just searching foreigners, they're searching Americans. Now, they're claiming they have the authority to do this, and wait until you hear this one. You know, I'm not a big fan of the ACLU in a lot of areas, but I will tell you this. In this area, in the protection of our First and Fourth Amendment rights, these guys are kicking some serious butt. And I'll tell you what, they got some power behind them because they have just gotten released from the DHS under an ACLU Freedom of Information Act request. The Civil Rights, Civil Liberties Impact Assessment on border searches of electronic devices. Now, this thing was issued back in 2011, and it took them 2 years to get this thing issued under a Freedom of Information Act. And here's the deal. Here's their own comment. Disappointingly, the DHS Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office disagrees with the assessment that they are conducting suspicionless searches of electronic devices at the border. I wish I had so much more time to go into this. Here's what you have to recognize. They are utilizing their authority, self-declared authority, I might add, to search all these laptops and phones, and the Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office of the Department of Homeland Security, that is supposed to be their watchdog group. That's supposed to be the group who's saying to them, hey, you guys are overstepping your bounds here constitutionally. You don't have the right to do that. And we're the watchdog group who's supposed to be protecting the citizenry. Guess what? They're in cahoots. They're playing with them. They're working with them. They're in collaboration with them. Listen to this one. I mean, it's going to blow your mind. Here's their rationale. Disappointingly, this is an article from ACLU, and I'm posting this up on our Facebook and website today. Disappointingly, the DHS Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office disagrees with the ACLU's contention that they're violating the rights. While its constitutional analysis is largely redacted, can you imagine? Here's a Freedom of Information Act request that they sent out, but what they did is they blacked out their entire constitutional analysis for why they think they have a right to do this. I mean, people, that is unconscionable. And so I got to read this to you in quotes because it's just amazing. While its constitutional analysis is largely redacted, it's unclear why, the report does explain why such a policy is, in the office's view, inadvisable. This is striking because it is the first time, as far as we know, that the government has explained why purely suspicionless searches supposedly enhance security. Here's the quote right out of the DHS Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office report, and wait until you hear what they redacted out. I mean, how do you take a constitutional analysis for illegal search and seizure and redact it saying that's national security secret? It's unbelievable. Listen to the quote. This is straight from them. This is their excuse. Adding a heightened, suspicion-based threshold of requirement could be operationally harmful without concomitant civil rights, civil liberties benefit. First, commonplace decisions to search electronic devices might be opened to litigation challenging the reasons for the search. Pause. So what they're saying there in the legalese is they don't want their searches to be challenged in court because the courts will find against them. I mean, this is unbelievable. I'm back on. In addition to interfering with a carefully constructed border security system, this litigation could directly undermine national security by requiring the government to produce sensitive, investigative, and national security information to justify some of the most critical searches. Pause. You've got to be flippin' kidding me. So what they're saying is, if we're compelled to show all of these searches that we've done by court discovery, we're screwed. I cannot believe that's in an well, that's why they wouldn't allow, well, that's why it took 2 years to get it out in the Freedom of Information Act. They didn't want this out. Back on. Even a policy change entirely unenforceable by courts might be problematic. People, can you hear this? I'm going to say that again. Even a policy change entirely unenforceable by courts might be problematic. We have been presented with some noteworthy CPB, that's Customs and Border Patrol, and ICE success stories, that's Immigration Customs Enforcement, success stories, based on, quote, hard to articulate intuitions or hunches, based on officer experience and judgment. Under a reasonable suspicion requirement, officers might hesitate to search an individual's device without the presence of articulable factors capable of being formally defended, despite having an intuition or hunch based on experience that justified a search. People, they are openly telling you they are violating the law, protecting themselves from discovery so that we cannot do anything about it, and they're explaining why. Because they don't want the courts to turn around and look at them and say, you are operating extra-constitutionally outside the law, and what you're doing is violative of the Constitution. To me, this is unbelievable and unconscionable. I cannot understand how this government, and listen, constitutional lawyers across the country should be filing briefs on this right now. This is the most incomprehensible behavior that I have ever seen by an agency who is openly declaring that they are violating the law and that they are trying to cover it up so that they are not forced to prove or forced it to be proven by discovery in court. And they're guaranteeing that these officers can continue with their, quote, a hard-to-articulate intuition or a hunch based on an officer's experience and judgment. I mean, that's unbelievable. There is no rule of law when it's all subjective based on an officer's hunch. So if the officer doesn't like the cut of the clothing you wear, if he doesn't like the way you wear your hair, if he doesn't like the way that you spoke to him or her, they have the right to then retaliate against you on a personal level by instituting an illegal search and seizure on some of our most personal documentation. Your medical records could be in there, your emails in there, your business information, secure proprietary info. I'm telling you, every corporation who has an employee that travels ought to be flipping out over this because all of their corporate intellectual property is exposed. I mean, America, where are you? Corporate litigation attorneys, where are you? You should be litigating this. Your intellectual property is at risk. I'm telling you, this is unconscionable behavior. I'll tell you, listen to the reasoning from the ACLU, because it's really, really telling, and it's excellently written. This line of thought is faulty for a few reasons. DHS claims that giving Americans the opportunity to challenge laptop searches in court would lead to the divulgence of national security secrets. But this is obviously wrong. The government has numerous resources at its disposal to prevent the disclosure of sensitive information. The state secrets privilege, to take just one example that is used in court cases, has been criticized on many grounds, but no one has ever seriously suggested that its protections are too anemic or weak. Although DHS might fear the prospect of being called into open court to explain its actions, executive accountability before the law is the bedrock on which our system of constitutional self-government is built. You constitutional monitors and you scholars out there, you constitutional attorneys, you litigation attorneys working for large corporations where your employees are traveling with proprietary corporate information and intellectual property, if you're not all over this like a hobo on a ham sandwich, I don't know how you can declare yourself to not be in malfeasance of your own fiduciary responsibility back to your citizens, back to your corporations, back to your employers. If you are not leaping all over this like white on rice, you are guilty of malfeasance to the corporation that you represent, because your intellectual property is now exposed to a low-level TSA agent who can then take that information and, for all you know, secret it off on a thumb drive and sell it off to the highest bidder. That ought to have your hair standing up on the back of your neck. This article is so well written, and I'm telling you, you know something, folks? The ACLU, I got a lot of problems with a lot of the things that they do. I don't stand up for all of their issues because I find that they, go too far in some areas. But I got to tell you, they are an organization which, from time to time, hits the nail on the head. And boy, have they struck gold on this one. This is truly amazing that this is such a broad-reaching risk to Americans. I'm not talking about every Tom, Dick, and Harry who's got pictures on their laptop of their grandkids and they're worried, or their children, or them, maybe a picture of their wife, that, scantily clad or something while they're traveling on business. And just think about that as an example. You might have something like that on your cell phone because you're traveling on business and you and your wife want to communicate that way. Hey, you know what? That's your personal business. But now that stuff is in the hands of a TSA agent. What are you going to do when your wife's picture or your husband's picture shows up on an internet porn site? Because the TSA agent went up there and posted it because your wife is smoking hot or your husband is smoking hot. Is that acceptable to you? And if you don't think I'm right, all you got to do is look at the story I did last week where I showed you that the FBI allows their individuals to conduct crime under the guise of shucks, I can't think of the word, where they're a professional rat. Confidential informant, thank you. Whew. Listen. They use confidential informants, and they encourage those confidential informants to break the law so that they can get the proof they want on the next guy they're trying to nab. Well, let me tell you something. The TSA, which is the border security group that will be monitoring and looking at your wife's photographs and your husband's photographs and your professional intellectual property, these people are accused of everything from child pornography to running sexual prostitution rings to stealing cash from people, stealing valuables out of people's laptops and suitcases, stealing laptops themselves. There are thousands, and I mean thousands, that is not an exaggeration, of cases against the TSA where these people they're advertising on pizza boxes for TSA workers. Is that how you get highly skilled, highly qualified, integrity-laden workers? I don't think so. So if you're willing to allow your intellectual property and your personal information, including, by the way, all your medical and health records, your tax returns, what else do you keep on those in your laptop or on a travel document that you have with you that these people want to get a hold of and take a look at? And what are you going to do when your personal information is exposed for all to see, based on some low-level TSA agent saying, hey, I can get $5,000 for this piece of information I found on this guy's laptop? All they got to do is stick a thumb drive in there and copy that file on that new prototype you're working at, and you're done. Your best project is exposed, and it's been sold to your competitor. And if you don't think it happens, you're a fool. You ought to know better than that. And I'm telling you, if you work for a large corporation and you know that you guys are working on information that is intellectual in its nature, intellectual property in its nature, trademark, copyrighted material, and you are not notifying your legal office of this type of thing, you are derelict in your duty as an employee of that corporation to protect under the non-disclosure agreement you've probably already signed, to notify your legal department that they should be litigating against this. You see, this is a grassroots effort that doesn't take a whole lot of act. And in fact, if you want to look at it from that perspective, I'm going to take it one step further. This is an opportunity for you, as a grassroots activist, to use OPM, other people's money, to fight our litigation battle. How? Get every corporate lawyer in the nation litigating and fighting this on behalf of their corporations, which will benefit whom? You, me, your sister, your mother, your cousin, your uncle, your brother, as they go through border security checkpoints. Suspicionless, warrantless searches without probable cause and due process they're unconstitutional for a reason. And if you work for a corporation or you have, I get it. We don't, as individuals, we don't have the wherewithal to fight this stuff because they beat us by financial attrition in court. They've got endless teams of lawyers who do nothing but sit around and type briefs all day long. We can't afford to pay lawyers to do that for us. But corporations also have those same teams of lawyers, and I'm here to tell you that if you're working for a corporation like that, I'll be more than happy to help you expand and expose this. Send me some email to mevans@americasvoicenow.org, MEVANS at americasvoicenow.org, or visit us at americasvoicenow.org. Click the contact link and send me an email about this. I'll get you the documentation that you need to present to your legal department. When they read this, they're going to have kittens, because all of their proprietary information is exposed every time you travel over a border. And it's not just a border between here and Mexico. Get on a flight from New York to Miami, and you have stayed within that 100-mile border zone. Your information is exposed, and they have the right to search you based upon pure suspicion and inarticulated hunches. What's the word they used? The phrase they used? Excuse me. I'd have to look for it. My point is this. When you are talking about the hunch of a TSA agent at an airport, and you look at the track record of TSA, you tell me that your corporation should be exposed to that. And I'm telling you that you're really not doing a proper job for your company. And if you're not working for a large company, or you're a small business or entrepreneur, and you've come up with a new creative idea, or you've written a book, and you don't want that information out there published, maybe you don't want the communications about business deals that you're currently working on and negotiating to merge or purchase or sell to another company. How much is that information worth to one of your competitors that you're about to buy or sell your business? How much? How much is it worth to your competitor to know that you're working on a real estate deal that you're going to build or buy a factory somewhere that's going to go into direct competition against them? What's that worth to the TSA agent poking around through your electronic suitcase? You see, this has far-reaching implications that most people haven't even taken into consideration. And I challenge you to be creative and think outside the box. Figure out how this affects you, why it affects you individually, and then help us and yourself to gather the resources as a grassroots organization to end this kind of practice. Use your corporate resources to beat this tyranny back. Use the association that you're a member of small businesses, and have your association collectively pay a lawyer to fight this. And protect yourself. Protect yourself from tyranny. Individually, professionally, and corporately. Okay, folks, thank you so much for being with us today. Please make sure that you check our website at americasvoicenow.org for all kinds of information that you need to know. And please make sure that you're working with us on a day-in and day-out basis. Share our video stream that we place up at YouTube. It's at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. That's youtube.com/America's Voice Now. If you take that and you send a stream of this over to somebody that you know is in a business and say to them, you know what, you ought to listen to this guy. The last 15 minutes, he outlined 25 good reasons why you ought to be scared out of your pants for what they're doing over here. Share this information. Let's help each other. That's what this is about. We've got to share, or we're keeping that knowledge to ourselves, and that's not good either. Find us also at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. I love you guys. Thanks. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. Monday, new 2-hour format. Yeehaw! Have a great day.